So, just how out of space, how far is outer space? Nobody better to answer than our resident spaceman, Eddie Whistler.
Oh, there's better people.
No, no. Well, not here in this
Yeah,
studio
no,
at
not
this
today,
moment.
probably.
Um, Eddie Whistler, of course, is director of the Brian Gooding Planetarium at the Museum of Science and History. He joins us once a month to help us understand this greater space around us. Today, we're talking about
Yeah.
distances in space.
Yeah, distances to space. Hopefully we can start close and get ourselves out to the observable universe. But you and I, we always take tangents and we wind up wherever we wind up. So
Wherever
that's
we
cool.
wind up. But
Yeah.
but it is hard for people to visualize space. It's such an kind of incomprehensible size for the human brain, mine particularly. So tell us how we misunderstand, we misapprehend how far things are apart.
Well, thinking about the topic that we might talk about today, I was reminded of some questions that I had by some students that were coming into the planetarium just a couple days ago. And also that there were just recent launches that were going out into, quote, space,
Mm.
right? So, classroom globe, size of the Earth. Uh, a lot of people imagine that, like, the International Space Station is somewhere, a significant distance off the surface. But the thickness, not the length of your pinky, but the thickness of your pinky is the height at which the altitude that the International Space Station is orbiting around the Earth.
Were the Earth the size of a classroom globe,
Yes.
the International Space Station would be a pinky's width
Yes.
away
Yeah.
from the Earth. So
Uh-huh.
so not that far in
No,
the
and
grand
that's
scheme
where
of
we
things.
that's where we regular, right? That's where we go. That's where humans are. And so, we're not way out there in space by any measure. On that same scale, the moon would be probably around 35 or 40 feet away.
Wow, so much further.
So much further.
And
Yeah.
what size would it be?
About the size of a baseball, roughly. Classroom globes, everybody has their own conception of what it is, but, more or less, these are the distances that we're talking about.
So that's extraordinary. It would be 40 feet away.
Yeah. And now that's just the nearby stuff. Like, it really gets mind-blowing when we start thinking about the distances between stars, which is what I brought for you. I brought you a gift.
Oh, what's this?
That is a little sand grain.
Okay, we've got
I brought her
demonstrable.
a little white sand grain that is right around a millimeter, and I put it on my black canvas. What is this thing?
Briefcase kind
Yeah,
of
like
thing.
briefcase.
Trapper keeper, we call
Yeah,
it.
and this little white 1 millimeter sand grain really sticks out in my trapper keeper. Wow, look at you! High five for that one.
Old school.
And so, and now let's imagine that the sun is the size of this thing right here, so 1 millimeter.
Okay.
First off, the sun can contain, let's say, 1 million Earths. If the sun was a planet piggy bank into which you could deposit planets, you go ahead and deposit around 1 million Earths inside of the sun. So the sun is enormous
Yeah.
compared to the Earth that we were just contemplating.
But here it's this tiny grain.
But now the sun is, down to the scale of this tiny grain. If you had to guess, what would be the distance to the next millimeter sand grain, our next nearest star to us?
Next nearest star to the sun?
To the sun, when the sun is the size of this 1 millimeter. We're scaling down
I gotcha.
space, we're scaling down the sun.
I would say, within a pinky's width.
Okay. If we were to scale down the sun to the size of a millimeter, and I challenge viewers or listeners, I should say, if you have a ruler nearby, go remind yourself how small a millimeter is. So look at the metric side, and the next closest millimeter grain sand would be 18 miles away.
Wow.
So that's maintaining the scale, not just of the sun, but the space between the stars as well. So our sun is a sand grain, 1 millimeter in diameter, which is kind of, admittedly, it's kind of a big sand grain
Yeah.
as far as sand grains go.
Sure.
But the next nearest sand grain, the next nearest star on that scale is 18 miles away.
I love when you just make my head explode on this show, Eddie. It's really a great experience.
It's fun. And now there's 250 billion of these sand grains in our galaxy,
Huh.
and galaxies collide. And so when galaxies collide, the space between the stars is so far that there's really no collision of stars. The galaxies more like merge, like ghosts that would join and bring all of the stars together to make bigger galaxies. And we see this happening out there in space as well.
This is something that you are available to talk about at the planetarium
Yeah,
all the time. You've got some summer stuff going.
all the time. We have summer. We're talking. So we do a series called Planetarium Night Live, and in June there's one, and we'll be talking about 700 days of James Webb Space Telescope.
Oh.
So that's coming up in June.
Good stuff.
Pretty much a month from now, June 21st, as a matter of fact.
I appreciate you coming in and helping us scale down the universe to a digestible discussion.
Yeah.
Great to see you, Eddie.
Have a good one.
All right.